I don't think this movie did exactly what I thought the directors intended, but it inadvertently works. Heretic is the latest theatrical release from A24. Directed by Scott Beck and Brian Woods, the movie follows two Mormon missionaries, Sister Barnes and Paxton, played by Sophie Thatcher and Chloe East, who visit the home of a Mr. Reed, played by Hugh Grant. The women become trapped in Mr. Reed's house, and the only way out is to play Mr. Reed's game of faith. So the directors of the movie wanted the scares to come from dialogue more than anything, aiming for it to be more of a cerebral film about the scary side of religion. And I'm going to be discussing the movie in that context. So our main characters, Sister Barnes and Sister Paxton, are Mormon missionaries that are introduced as a bit naive, and the audience likely already comes in assuming their naivete simply for the fact that they are Mormon missionaries. When they're introduced, we see them having a conversation about a porno film that Sister Paxton had watched. So we get to see a bit of their innocence in that moment, but also their candor and their willingness to discuss these topics, even if it makes them a little bit uncomfortable. And I think that was a really important way to introduce these two characters that informs their interaction with Mr. Reed later on when he starts questioning certain aspects of the Mormon faith, like polygamy. I thought Sophie Thatcher and Chloe East's performance were really great and super believable. And as I understand, both actors grew up in the Mormon church, so there was definitely like a background knowledge and experience that they brought to these roles that just makes these roles seem really natural, and it's interesting to watch it play out. Also love how claustrophobic this movie feels. The distinct and separate rooms, the closed floor plan makes everything feel like we are on the other side of a two-way mirror observing this experiment play out. The warm colors and woods of the set also make Reed's home feel very academic. And in any other case, the setting would be really cozy and comforting. Like all of the books, the low lighting, the comfy chairs. But then Reed gets going on his monologues and things start to become less cozy, more suffocating. And the camera reflects this, more often cutting back and forth between Reed and Sisters Barnes and Paxton, supporting how at odds the characters are and adding to that feeling of claustrophobia. I found the movie to be really well paced, actually. I feel like the separate sequences are long enough for us to get the information that we need as viewers, but they don't overstay their welcome. The pacing of each sequence also contributes to us as viewers feeling uncomfortable, just as uncomfortable as Barnes and Paxton are once they enter Mr. Reed's house. We spend more time than I thought we would in the front room and in Reed's study that we see in the trailer. I could really feel the discomfort and the desire to just get the fuck out of that building. It was just building and building, which sets up beautifully for when the sisters finally choose a door and enter the basement. By the time we get down there, I was so overwhelmed with discomfort that I feel like anything would make me jump out of my skin. And the title of the movie kind of sets you up, being called Heretic. We already understand going in there's going to be some religious themes to this, and I feel like the religious themes were kind of varying in the movie, ranging from the fear of people who are very certain and unwavering in their beliefs to the fear of what happens to us after we die, which I feel like is a very natural human fear, and especially the controlling nature of particularly the world's most popular religions. In an interview with Polygon, director Scott Beck says, quote, "What the movie latently is addressing is this idea of control, organizations that exert control over the eons since religions began." I think that message is a worthy one, and it's not one that we see very often or really at all in religious horror movies. And if it is present, it's usually a little bit more subtextual than this movie. However, I would just say that this movie feels like just like a presentation of these ideas. Nothing in the story really goes beyond the revelation of that, like, hey, you know, I think all male-led religions are ultimately about the control and subjugation of women, you know? Isn't that just wild? However, I think this could open the door to do more horror films in the future that explore this idea more deeply and explore the nuances of that idea, especially if they're coming from filmmakers that make up these marginalized groups that often get subjugated and controlled in these religions. It would hit a little different coming from the point of view of like an oppressed group to these large religions. And I'm gonna read a quote from the other director of the movie, Brian Woods. It's long, but I feel like it provides important context for like the intended meaning of this movie. There is a subtextual layer running through Heretic about the dynamic between men and women in certain institutions and in religion at large. Reed's not literally saying this, but he might as well be talking about how the Pope is always a man. He might as well be talking about how in religious history, Eve was created from Adam's rib. A lot of dated sexist ideas are prevalent in some of the ancient religions. Men wrote the holy books and recorded that history, so it's passed from man to man to man. I hope the movie is scratching at that. We're trying to embody that conversation by putting two young females in conversation with Mr. Reed and watching him underestimate them, seeing how intelligent they are, and also seeing the depth that they have that maybe we don't expect. That was of interest to us. And I feel like the horror works because it's doing exactly what the directors are hoping the movie scratches at. It's about a man exerting control over these women in a religious context. Mr. Reed's ultimate religion, his one true religion that he has finally found after all of his years and years and years of research, is control. Like the quote said, control that men have exerted over others for centuries. In that sense, it's not really about what religion the characters believe. I feel like it would still work if Sister Barnes and Sister Paxton were any other two characters and they were a part of any other religion, because Reed is embodying all patriarchal religions. They are all about control. And I think there were details in the movie that like maybe hinted at a deeper discussion of this, like more than just surface level, that I felt the movie was at. Like the fact that all of the prophets that Reed has in his basement are all women. And the fact that he picks Sister Paxton to be his next prophet simply because he clocks that Sister Barnes might be more difficult to control. Like early in the movie, we see that Mr. Reed notices a small scar on Sister Barnes's arm, about right here, which is confirmed later to be the scar from a birth control implant. Which, as a side note, I'm curious as to how many of you clocked what that scar was when Mr. Reed notices it, like long before it's confirmed what it is, and how that may or may not have changed your viewing experience, maybe. Because I definitely feel like it changes Sister Barnes's characterization in an important way. Overall, I did have a good time watching the movie. I think the effectiveness of being stuck listening to a man monologue about philosophy and religion was scary and uncomfortable, and then the actual scares in the movie were also good. Personally, I would like to see a horror movie that explores like the nuances of this conversation. Maybe that's just me. Solid movie for sure. I feel like this would be a great one for Does This Offend You as well. So what did you think about Heretic? Let me know in the comments, and let me know how it ranks for you in your like 2024 horror movie ranking list. We're almost to the end of the year, so it's time to start refining those lists. I'm curious if this is like on the higher or lower end for you. Thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you soon with another video. I'm going to talk about my favorite horror movie scores. Until then, stay strange. Bye.